Viewers, welcome back to the third part of the May ANU series edition. Once again, we are going to bring all the positive news that's happening around us even during the COVID times. So the first part we covered more on the international news and the new law that has been brought on increasing the mining and mineral laws. And then the last part we covered a lot about the production linked incentive. This part we are going to cover a lot on the payment ecosystem. So one of the things that the government and RBI has been trying to do is to de-risk India's digital payments ecosystem. Now if you see, we have slowly moved away after the demonetization. We had moved away to a lot of digital payments. So the usage of NEFT, RTGS, and before that use of credit card for payment settlement, though it was predominantly an urban phenomenon, now has started moving towards the rural areas. And then something happened where the mobile penetration increased and people started using UPI settlements substantially. So we notice that most of the transactions today are happening through UPI, and it happens through a company called National Payment Corporation of India. It's a subsidiary of RBI and it's a non-profit organization. So RBI does realize, even if it is its own subsidiary, having one company to handle all this transaction is not good for the ecosystem, and therefore RBI has recently issued guidelines for corporates to create non-profit NUE, which is basically new umbrella entity, with an aim to foster competition on the digital payment ecosystem. So there will be the National Payment Corporation of India and its BHIM and its the UPI and for the payment system, but the RBI also wants to bring in competition into the system, because one of the beautiful things that the government has realized right now is whenever you bring competition, the customer gets a much better experience. The customer also gets a reduced cost. And third, most importantly, the robustness of the system start improving whenever there's competition, because that's the differentiating factor people bring into it. So one of the key points in the guidelines is that no single promoter shall hold more than 40% stake in the new umbrella entity. And this will subsequently be brought down to less than 25% in 5 years' time. So you will see there's a lot of commonalities in the rules that have been created with respect to the banking licenses that RBI gives. So RBI is very clear that no single player should have a monopoly with respect to financial transactions, or whether it's a lending or even a normal settlement of bills. Then the second thing that they have brought in the rule is that the paid up capital of the new umbrella entities has to be minimum 500 crores. And so far, 6 consortiums have submitted applications, and it will almost read like who's who. So there is MoPay, which is basically a consortium of Axis Bank, ICICI Bank, with 20% each, and you have BillDesk, Pine Labs, Amazon, Visa, with each one of them as 15% stake. So they seem to be a very strong contender because they already have 2 banks, and they have a couple of companies who are already into the digital payment ecosystem. The second is a consortium by Reliance Industries, which also has Infibeam Avenue, Facebook and Google as minority stakeholders. We know last year there was a substantial investment by both Facebook and Google in Reliance, and therefore they have come as a part of this umbrella entity. The third is by Furbein Payments, which is basically a company that's promoted by Tata Group, which will have 40%, and they will have as partners Airtel Digital, MasterCard and NABARD. Each one of them will hold around 10%. HDFC and Kotak Bank will hold around 9.9% each. And Flipkart, through its subsidiary FlipPay and PayU, will also have 5% each. Now, once again, apart from MoPay, this Furbein Payment will also be a very strong conductor because it's backed by Tatas and a bevy of companies which all have very strong credentials. And then you have Faster Payments, where Paytm will have right now has around 50%. Then Ola Financial, Policy Bazaar and IndusInd Bank are all expected to pick up 10% stake each. And then there's going to be there's another consortium which is basically promoted by Centrum Finance and Suryodaya Small Finance and Think360.com and Fintech Zeta are all the other co-promoters in this consortium. And then there is finally a consortium led by FSS. FSS is once again a very famous digital payment company and a gateway company provider and gateway provider. And then along with Razorpay, that's the other consortium. So basically the idea is to increase penetration of digital ecosystem. Now what whenever a competition gets into a new area, what it also does is it substantially increases the penetration. Look at what mobile phone competition has done. Today, every little house in any village also has a mobile phone, and therefore a lot of the government services are able to be significantly able to reach the doorstep of a citizen with the least effort. Just look at the vaccination drive and the usage of CoWIN app that we have been able to do, using Aadhaar as an enabling factor and using CoWIN as a software. Today we are able to see the level of penetration, whether the first dose has been taken or the second dose has been taken, what is the vaccination used in the first dose. So just have this ability to use the digital systems, digital platforms, whether it is for trade and settlement of trade, or whether it is for vaccination or any of the citizen services, it's going to reap phenomenal benefit for the citizens, because it will improve the efficiency, it will improve the experience, and most importantly substantially cut down the corruption. So bringing UPI system has eliminated people to deal with cash, worry about the cash being stolen, and most importantly reduce their transaction cost. The next important thing RBI has also been able to do is that they have allowed RTGS and NEFT the non-banking finance companies to become participants in NEFT and RTGS. So far, only the banking system players were allowed to be part of the RTGS and NEFT, and right now they are allowing all non-banking finance companies also to get into this use this as a platform, which means one thing is very, very clear. RBI is very clear that they want to reduce the currency printing option and to start using digital payment. So therefore, once you get into a digital payment mode, and now that all the bank accounts are seeded with PAN and Aadhaar, the informal economy will slowly start coming into the mainstream. And when this starts happening, there will be a better tax compliance. And therefore, because all these things have come in white, small entrepreneurs will be able to raise capital and cash at much lower interest rates. So formalization of economy, while it is very feared by a lot of small and medium entrepreneurs, they will have to see it from a broader perspective, because at the end of the day, this is going to bring in a lot more benefits to them, because they will become inclusive in the financial growth of the country, and they will be able to get loans at a cheaper rate. Though they will have to pay the taxes, the component of taxes, direct taxes, will slowly start coming. We have already seen that the government over the last 2-3 years has reduced the the direct taxes to be paid by the companies. And therefore, what you will see as the base of tax compliance increase, the cost of taxes will, the amount of tax that is being charged will come down. So through GST, the indirect taxation is really becoming streamlined. And through financial transactions, even the direct taxations will start getting streamlined, and you will see progressively, as the base increases, government's ability to spend money for infrastructure and citizens' benefit and reduce the cost of running the business will really be able to help every little citizen. The another significant development, we are moving away from RBI to something very, very interesting, which is the GST Council. The GST Council has started using the e-way bill tracking as an effective mean to plug the loopholes in the system. Now, sometime back, we all realized that the tolls were all made mandatory and the FASTag was made mandatory. People really couldn't understand what was the whole game that was going behind it. But the fact that FASTag became mandatory, which means all vehicles could get tracked, because FASTag is a national electronic payment system when you come across the toll. People were very happy because it reduced their fuel cost, because the waiting time in toll came down. They didn't have to have cash. Everything was, there was a digital cash available in the wallet, and people could, the toll booths would be able to get paid. They also had the benefit of, if they were able to return within 12 hours, there was only a discount was passed on to them. Now, these were all the benefits that they were enjoying. But now that GST has started tracking the e-way bill linked to the lorry, the loopholes are beginning to be plugged, which means now when a e-way bill is issued, let's say from Mumbai to Delhi, and then suddenly they find that the vehicle is entering Karnataka, they know that something is going wrong, and therefore the truck will have to necessarily go along the highways which will take it to Delhi, because the moment there's a deviation, they know there's something wrong that's gone on. And both the FASTag and e-way bill tracking can also, to a large extent, progressively reduce the crimes associated with hijacking of the vehicles. The second thing is the tracking also noticed that if a e-way bill was issued and the vehicles were not traveling, then also there's a possibility that the bill that was raised was bogus. And then integrating with FASTag gives them complete control of the movement of the trucks, where it is waiting. And in fact, today most of the trucks also come with their own tracker, but integrating with FASTag and almost all national highways and progressively the state highways coming under the toll system, it gives them extraordinary tracking ability. And finally, the GST Council has also said that non-tracking of returns more than 2 months is going to block the participants from getting any e-way bill issued. So all these things, once again, as we talked about earlier, is going to ensure that there's going to be lesser and lesser leakage of tax, whether it's the direct taxation or the indirect taxation, and therefore a larger corpus of money is going to be available to the government, and a possibility progressively of reducing interest rates and also reducing cost of transaction, and also reducing a hindrance for entrepreneurs to access cheaper capital. Then finally, there is a big change, as we talked some time ago, about the agriculture sector. So this year we had a record procurement of wheat using direct benefit transfer, and you suddenly saw that though all these wheats were being procured at minimum support price, you saw a huge beeline of farmers going along with their tractors and trucks to start giving it to the procurement centers and get the cash credited into their bank account. Can you even imagine what a liberating feeling it can be for the farmers? And unless you step into these shoes, you will never be able to understand what a liberating feeling this has been for the farmers. The second good thing that has happened in agriculture is that the area of summer crop has expanded by 21.58% to 80.2 lakh acres, and there's a sharp increase in the acreage of pulses, which has almost gone up by 70% when compared to last year. Now, if you see, the minimum support prices are generally available for cereals but not for pulses, and India has traditionally been importing a lot of pulses, and we have also been importing a lot of oil seeds. So this year, because of the higher price availability, we are also seeing that the acreage under pulses and oil seeds has increased. A large amount of this increase is also due to the great irrigation efforts taken by Telangana and Andhra government and many such states which have rolled out good dams. The third very positive news on agriculture is the monsoons are hitting Kerala on June 1st to June 3rd. So once again, we are expected to have normal monsoons, and the government has come out and increased the fertilizer subsidy on diammonium phosphate, which is once again a major input to the farming sector apart from urea. And then finally, for us, fortunately, the Philippines has reduced the duty of rice from 40 to 35%. Now this 35% duty benefit was available only to the countries which were a part of their free trade agreement, in which India was not participating. It was an ASEAN free trade agreement, and then it also included Japan, China, and 2 more countries, and we were not part of that free trade agreement. But unfortunately for Philippines, the major countries which were producing rice for them was Indonesia and Thailand and Vietnam. Not Indonesia, Thailand and Vietnam, and both Thailand and Vietnam had a much lower crop of rice, and since the staple food for Philippines is rice, they reduced the duty, and therefore there's a phenomenal opportunity for Indian traders to start exporting rice to Philippines, because we have a surplus production both in North India and South India. Viewers, thank you so much for watching this episode of May 2021 ANU series part 3. Please stay tuned. The next part we are going to cover a lot more on technology, trends, and certain innovative practices by our companies and things that are happening around us. Thank you so much for viewing.